everybody, and welcome to today's Mike Ames Recruitment Show, where, as you can see, we're going to be talking about how to use webinars as your primary BD tool to win clients. And our very special guest today is the one and only Pete Ames. Now, Mike, why do we have Pete on my show today?
I know that's a bit awkward, isn't it? It's for two reasons. First of all, he runs a lot of webinars on behalf of some of our clients. So he kind of knows a lot about webinars. And also, sometimes I think it's just nice to put his face on there to remind everybody else how lucky they are when he's not on the show.
See how I respect that. Yeah, I like that. Yeah, I like it. I like it. So welcome to Pete.
And just leave.
Oh, don't do that. Don't do that. Okay, Mike. So, webinars. We pride ourselves on this show at being at the forefront of sort of technology and how you can be innovative and stuff. Why are we talking about webinars today? Because everybody's done them, everybody knows what they are, everybody's run them. Why are we talking about it?
Well, I don't think what you just said there is necessarily the case, because I think when lockdown came, well, we were doing webinars before lockdown and always struggled to get people on them because it's like, no, you can do it from your laptop. Yeah, but no, can't be arsed, right? So then, of course, lockdown arrived and everybody's like gorging themselves on webinars and live stream and podcasts and God knows what else. And that's great. And then, I've got some work to do now. Not doing that anymore and over the shoulder. However, when done properly, when produced properly, and we're going to talk about that today, when used properly, and I'm going to really drill down on that today, they can be massively powerful. They cost little or no money. It's peanuts, pennies really to run. Just need a bit of software to use, Zoom probably. And they can do things quicker and faster than pretty much any other business development tool I know. So I'm just very, very keen in this show. I've been really looking forward to it because I'm very keen just to reveal the truth and let people, the scales shall fall from their eyes, is what I think. I'm on holiday at the moment, as you can probably see. I'm by the seaside, and I just feel a bit, But the whole point is that once you see what it is, what webinars are, and how easy they are to run, Peter's going to explain all about that later. I think it might just be an epiphanal moment. And at the end, we've got a little something for you as well, if you want, that will help you with this as well. So I'll save that one until a little bit later.
Fantastic. So let's just dive in, because you mentioned there that people may have preconceived ideas about webinars that may be a little bit misguided. So let's just make sure everyone's singing from the same hymn sheet. Let's just dispel some of these myths that you speak of. So Mike, I'm going to come to you for the first myth, and then Pete, I'm going to bring you in the second. What's a big one that you think is there, Mike?
I think, so many. I think the biggest for me is, actually, you know what? I'm going to go with one that someone said to me, who I respect deeply, and she may even be watching this show today. No one will come, is what she said. Nobody will come, and that's just not true. Well, two things about that. With a webinar, if no one comes, nobody knows except you. No one knows, right? You can broadcast whatever it is you're broadcasting to one person, act as though there's 1,000 people there. No one will know, and that one person could be a high-value client for you. So who knows? But the second thing is they will come. If you pick the right subject and if you promote it in the right way, they will come, right? 100% they will come. Well, let's put it this way. On this show now, I don't know how many people are watching it live. Normally, we'll get usually a third-ish of people who say they're going to come and watch it live, and then 10 times to 15 times that many people watch the recordings of it, and we know that. So we had 60, we've got about 60 or 70 people coming to this, I think, haven't we, Pete? Mm-hmm. And we didn't have anybody 3 days ago because I forgot to promote it. Awkward. So, you do build up a sort of a following, or people realize if they come, they're going to get some value. Yeah, but nonetheless, if you've got the right subject to promote it in the right way, people will come. I think it's over to Pete now. Let's just back this back up and forwards.
Yeah. Okay, here's my myth. A webinar is a chance for you to just sell at people. How many of us have been on that webinar? You log on thinking you're going to be taught, and he's picking up what Mike was saying about the right thing. We've all been burnt. I get burnt all the time because I'm constantly watching marketing webinars for looking for tech tips and tricks and new tech to bring into the recruitment industry. And the number of times that 5 minutes and I'm like, oh, not another one. And you just leave and I'll never go back, right? So it's not, hey, I'm a recruiter. Let me talk to you about how I do my job. And then you'll buy from me, yeah? Right? That's not a good webinar.
No.
So don't do that.
I think it's interesting you say that because at one point we didn't promote anything at all ever, right? And people used to ask us why we didn't do that. It's kind of like expected. It's all about the ratios. If you've given value for 45 minutes and you ask for 2 minutes back to promote something, that's absolutely fine. Yeah. If you're selling for 45 minutes and give them 2 minutes of value, not so good, not so clever. So that's a great myth. I wish I'd thought of that one first, actually.
You didn't. I'll tell you what, I've got one though. I've got one which I think is probably a lot of people watching this, that they're really difficult to run, that they're really technical, and there's a lot of things like bells and whistles to kind of pull and ring. And
how can they be? Peter does it.
That's a fair point.
And especially if you've been taught by Kirsty how to behave on camera, like it's nothing really. Webinars are easy. I won't lie that they're not scary. Everything's scary the first time. You know, you're telling your new hires to do a cold call to a client. They're scared. You know it's not scary, right? You've just got to punch through it. And it's the same with webinars. Yes, you're scared, but there's not actually much to be scared of. All the things in your head that could go wrong, they won't happen.
And if they do,
we have a set process that we use with our clients. It's just ABC, just follow the list. You do what it says on the list. And at the end, you have a webinar. It really is that simple. It's a checklist. So it's not that difficult. You use Zoom as a product. I know Pete's going to talk about that later. You set things up properly. You just run it. I've got another one. Here's one then. Nobody would want to come and listen to me because I've got nothing to say, or nothing that's important to say, or I can't think of anything, or I'll run out of ideas, right? That's a myth because it's not about you. It's about finding people that have got something interesting to say to the audience that you're appealing to. Simple as that. So you are the facilitator, if you will. It's different if you're a knowledge worker like we are. So we use this partly as a platform to promote various things that we do, but mostly about adding value and therefore letting people know that we know what we're talking about.
Do you know a great example of that one from our back catalogue? I was thinking about this, only a great example of that from our back catalogue. We did a webinar 18 months plus ago now, I think. And we had a former police hostage negotiator.
Oh, he's great. Come on, get back on the show.
Just about how to ask good questions. Right? Now, that's very little to do with what we do, but we know that our audience, and it was one of the most popular. And still, when I mention it to somebody, they always say, oh, yeah, send me that link. In fact, if anybody does want the link, just put a little comment and I'll get it over to you.
It's a great thing. He was a hostage negotiator in Iraq and Afghanistan, and he worked. He's brilliant, but his way of listening, active listening, deep listening, I think he called it, was brilliant. Anyway, yeah, you're right. But the point is, it's not about you. You don't have to worry about that. One of my clients, this was, 2 years ago, was it? 2 years ago, I think. And this is a slight deviation from webinars, but you can see how this would work with webinars. He wanted to set a blog up, and I said, well, I don't think we want to be doing that. I think what we need at that stage is a podcast. We'll just run a podcast, right? And he said, oh, I don't know about that. It's his single biggest source of new clients now, the podcast. Not people listening to it, come to him and saying, I listened to that great podcast. Would you do this, that, and the other? He invites guests on to come and talk about something that's of interest to his community, and then he does business with them. And I tell you, there's another guy who doesn't mind me naming him because he's very proud of it, called Rob Tyson. And he broadcasts out to the mining industry. And I think he's the #1 podcaster there. But this isn't about whether it's a podcast, a live show, or a webinar. It's about getting guests on to talk about something that your audience will be interested in. If you do that, that myth just disappears. Off with the ether.
Yes, it works really well.
Okay, so as always, guys, if we have any questions, you know I like to see Mike and Pete on the spot, so feel free to pop them in. If you disagree with us on anything, feel free to do it. It makes my day better, so do it. I feel like, guys, pardon?
Please do. Yes, please do.
I feel like I want to move on to the next section. So we are going to talk about how we can use this as BD. But before that, there's a couple of questions I get every single time we talk about webinars. And I just want to cover them off quickly, just so that people have something to go with. So the first question is, how am I supposed to decide what to talk about? You already spoke about, we had someone on talking about how to ask questions. Or how am I supposed to figure out what to talk about? Pete, let's go to you on this.
Okay, well, there's kind of two different ways you can approach this. There's the very easy one is that you work with someone who's worked with lots of webinars, and they'll give you a bunch of ideas. Right? That's one, and then you just take it. That's option one. Option two, let's presume you don't want to do that. Option two, you've got a blank slate. The first thing I recommend everybody does is they inject 2 questions into their conversations that they have with clients, with candidates, with prospects. What are you excited about for the next 12 months? Okay. What are you worried about in the next 12 months? And they will tell you that, and you sometimes you have to clarify, I don't mean about recruitment, mate. No, just in general, in what's going on in your job. And they will just start telling you the stuff that's at the forefront of their mind. And once you know what it is they care about, you've got the topic. Then you just need to find the guest. You can also, and the second kind of question I would approach would be, okay, what's the best podcast, best talk, best blog you've read, best article you've read, most influential, insightful thing? What do you recommend I should read or listen to or follow or go to if I want to know more? And they'll tell you. Oh, I went to this. It was brilliant. Okay, well, if you liked it, probably someone else does. Who was that speaker? I'll go grab him.
I'll tell you something else as well around this, actually. When you talk to people, most of them are interested in what other people like them are doing about something that they are trying to tackle as well. So take an example, commission schemes, right? Okay, so wonder if my commission scheme is right. Wonder if I'm overpaying or underpaying. Wouldn't it be great to know what everybody else is doing around that? Well, if you bring in somebody the same as them, so the same kind of person as them, to talk about how they tackled a problem or how they approached something that you think your audience might be questioning themselves about, people will come to listen to that. In fact, they'll listen to those people more than they'll listen to the experts, because these are people they can equate with. They're the same as them. They got the same challenges, same background, right? And we try and get a few of those people on. We've got a great guy coming on in December, by the way, who's done a lot of stuff you'd be interested in. But the point is your subject, everything that you need to know about your topic and the questions to ask them lies in the hearts and minds and wishes and fears of your target audience. In other words, your client base. And it's dead easy to liberate if you get into the habit of, as Pete said, tacking a few extra questions onto a conversation you're having about a piece of work or whatever it is. Or if you're out for a bit of lunch or a bite, for coffee.
You know what you can do? Everybody's got that list. Mike, you talk about the forgotten 45%. Those people who, I'll take your call and stuff, but not right now, I'm not going to work with it. And you need to remind them you exist. You need to reach out to them. Take this list. You can be explicit. Hey, thinking of get some webinars.
That's some cool. Do you remember we run a mastermind group, right? And we were talking about this several months back. We were talking about this subject and how you can kind of reach out to people. And she came back at the next event and said, I actually picked a piece of business up because I rang a load of people. She was going for lapsed clients, fair enough, but nonetheless, people she hadn't spoken to for ages. She said, can you help me? I'm just doing a bit of research around this subject. We gave her the script and everything to use. And she picked up some business from that, just because it was a reason to interact, an RTI, an excuse to make contact and talk about something that wasn't work. And then the client brings it round to work if they want it to. So this is a double whammy. I'd forgotten about that, actually, Pete. Well done.
Yeah, it's important. Everybody thinks webinars are an overhead. Oh, that's another myth. It's an overhead. I've got to get people on it. That's time consuming. I've got to figure. No. It's all sales. All of it's sales. Hi. No, we're not spoken for a while. Can I ask a favor? Hi. We had this. Do you want to get a copy? It's all sales because you're one interacting.
This is your show, and Peter's stealing my thunder.
I know, but I'm allowing it because it's funny. But I do want to move on to the next point. Pete sort of alluded to it already, Mike, that you can ask people, who they think is a good thought leader in a space. But how else am I supposed to find like guests or panelists or experts that I can have helping me on the webinar? Mike.
Oh, that's me, is it? Sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry, I thought it was Peter, actually. Apologies for that. Okay, excuse me. Yeah, you're right. Yeah. Okay. Well, here's the interesting thing. You'll get people on your webinar if you can show those people somebody else like them, maybe even more important than them, who have been on your webinar. So what you need to do to begin with is think about what favor you can call in to get a really senior person, a real big hitter on your show from the get-go. Could be a client, could be somebody you call a favor in. I don't really think you should pay people. Some people want to be paid. It's a lot of dough, and I wouldn't do that really. But you can get somebody in. You know people. Everybody knows people. Call a favor in, get somebody big on. Once you've got one person on and you've got that webinar set up on a website somewhere so you can point people towards it, it makes it so much easier then to get the next person and the next person. And that's always the case. And I'm telling you now, I'm kind of taking my own thunder from what I'm going to be talking about in a few minutes time, but to approach somebody and say, look, here's the thing, we run this webinar series. Here's an example of some of the ones that we've done. And we'd really like you to come on as a guest because so-and-so and so-and-so recommended you. And he says you can talk about this, that, or the other. We'd love you to come on. Can we have a small conversation about it? The chances of getting a positive response to that are significantly greater to, here's a job, I've got this great candidate. You know what I mean? So I think once you've found your voice, the things you want to broadcast about, talk about that in a second, then getting the guests is relatively easy because you can approach them. And if you approach enough of them, you don't approach that many, then somebody will say yes, you know, or you can get introductions. Again, this is not the same. It's kind of like, I think it's flattering because it's sort of saying, well, you're really important, or you know something that people want to know. Would you come on the show? So, well, okay. Yeah. I don't think I've ever asked anybody. Actually, I did actually. I asked a HR director who wouldn't come on, but then she just didn't like video, so I guess that's it. But most people say yes. Yeah.
Okay. All right. And then I do want to move on to the BD stuff. So Pete, the final question I have for you is, how am I supposed to get people to attend the webinar? Because that, as Mike mentioned, is a big myth. People won't turn up. So what kind of things can you do to encourage people to arrive?
Okay. So I think I touched on one of these already. The first thing you should use is the phone. There's a list of people that you haven't spoken to for a while, and you've been kind of, I'll get around to it. The reason you're not doing it is because you can't think what to say. That's why you're delaying it. Here's the reason. I've got a webinar. Do you want to come? Yes, no, doesn't matter. How are you? Right? But some will say yes. Cool. I'll register you now. Which email address? You register them there and then. And that gets people there. You send emails, LinkedIn messages, and WhatsApps and texts to, you know, another bank of people, that one-to-one, where you just want to remind them you exist, and that's where the relationship is. So that's two things, both of which are sales. They are a sales step. Then we move more into the marketing world. And the number one thing is you want to be building is an email list. So people who attend a webinar, would you like to know about future webinars? Yes. Okay, that's great. You're building that list. Maybe you've got a newsletter and you're putting it in there. Announcement, very exciting new guest talking about this super important topic. Please click here. So you leverage that. You're also going to leverage, especially if you use something like LinkedIn and LinkedIn events, then it allows you to invite your first connections. Now, we have a big list of people that we invite to this. Many of you watching it have probably received that little notification once you come. That's done in a combination of Mike thinking about who he wants to send, us having a list that we have a VA run for us, and a little bit of automation tools as well. And you're firing that out, and that event then ties back into the webinar. So that's a very, very effective way of getting people onto webinars. And then finally, you can do paid ads and LinkedIn posts. So LinkedIn posts that are subtle, talking about things, not an explicit, here's a webinar. You've got to be a bit more subtle than that. Otherwise, LinkedIn just won't promote it. But you're doing that. If you really, really want to, you can go for paid promotion on certain platforms.
Can I show, Pete, can I show the, so Zoom, just, I know we're a bit short of time and everything, but Zoom gives you, Zoom webinars gives you a big breakdown and stuff. Let me show you this, right? So let me make it big so you can see all of it. There you go. So this is the back part of a Zoom webinar. This was it was actually supposed to be a workshop with 12 people in, but it kind of turned into a webinar in the end. And this is where we got our people from. So we got 16 people from our email that we sent out. We got 31 from a couple of LinkedIn posts I did. We got 13, well, actually it was 17, I think, from the expo, because 4 of them weren't actually registered using that URL. Kirsty got 1 and I got 1 from Twitter. Now, that tells you how many people clicked through, and it tells you how many people registered, and it tells you where they came from. This data is absolutely goldmine when you're trying to figure out where you can promote your webinars or whatever. And it's very good, because the other thing that Zoom tells you is who came and who didn't, how long they stayed for. It's brilliant. It's absolutely outstanding. It's a really good product.
I mean, just to throw some more on the list as well, and tracking is super important, because you can stop doing things that don't work. The other one, email your signature on your email. You can put them in there. We don't do that. It found it didn't work, but some people I know do it, and it does work for them. Also, your guest, if you've played the card right, and we'll talk more about your guest can also, you can write posts for them, but your guest should be inviting their email list, especially if they're a coach or a subscriber or whatever. So that can be a valuable source.
Do you remember we did that joint webinar when we were working with accountants and lawyers? We did that joint webinar with that guy that served the accountants industry. So basically, you do joint webinars with people that serve the same audience but offer different things, right?
Yes.
He bought his, we bought ours. And when we looked at where they'd come from, it was about 50-50, but we didn't know any of the people that he brought, any of the people that he got onto that webinar. We didn't know any of them. It was amazeballs. And it took us ages to work through that list, but doing joint webinars is a great way to get people onto your show.
Indeed. Now, guys, I feel like we could talk about this for a while, but I do really want to get into the kind of meat of this show, which is how we actually use this in a BD sense. How are we going to reach decision makers using a webinar? Now, Pete, I know you got a couple of points on this, so can you start us with your first one?
Well, I think this is one of the very biggest myths. People misunderstand what the webinar is supposed to do for them, right? They think of it in a very small, there's a webinar and I run it and then there's business, right? And most high value clients, which is what we talk about, really high value clients, take a bit more than that. So I want to step back almost a little bit and say, where does the webinar sit? And the first thing I would say is, in recruitment, Mike, you did this research, didn't you? I don't know if you want to just quickly run through the top 3. You did research on why hiring managers use a particular recruiter. And it's the third one I'm interested in. But you want to just wrap up quick?
So very quick, right? This was ages ago, but I think it's still valid now. Number 1 is because they have to, because you're on a supply list, right? Number 2 is because they've used you before, either this company or a company elsewhere, right? So they kind of know the familiarization, right? But number 3 is that you can find candidates that other agencies aren't finding, right? So if you're getting the same people from the same agencies, not much of a differentiator. If your candidates are good ones and they've not seen them before, that's a big step up for you. That's what you're talking about there, Pete.
That's what I'm talking about. And one of the things that people believe will mean you can find candidates others can't is if they believe that you are an expert in their industry.
Yeah.
Here's the problem with recruitment. We take college graduates with 6 months experience and we teach them to say, I'm a specialist in blah, blah, blah. And all this means is most clients take it with a pinch of salt and a little bit of an eye roll, because telling people something isn't anywhere near as powerful as showing them something. And you can show that you are an expert in a particular industry or a particular niche by demonstrating how well you understand it. Hey, I understand your world so well, I've put on this webinar, which is bang on the money for what you're interested in. I found this expert because I'm so enmeshed in the industry, and I've brought it all together. And when I host it, I'm going to ask questions and I'm going to make points which demonstrate just how deep I understand this. And I've done this with people, and we ourselves have kind of had this as well. People come along and then they reach out. They reach out because they're like, my current shit and don't know anything. You clearly know your business. And so you've not sold a thing, not sold a dime. You've just said, I'm a recruiter and I know this world. Let me show you. So that's really, really powerful as a way of using webinars in BD.
Yeah, it is. I think, I mean, there are lots of ways. We could spend quite a lot of time going through these, and we probably will cover as the important ones. I think they work really well when they're part of a wider strategy for winning clients. So we talked on the show many times about tactical business development, which is vacancy scraping and specking, and strategic business development, which is effectively building a relationship, building trust and confidence and rapport with somebody until you reach the stage where actually it just seems natural to do business together, right? Webinars can work in both of those. So one of our clients runs webinars for candidates. And how many do they get on average? They only do 3.
It's triple figures.
It's several hundred. In fact, they had to lift it at one point. I think the limit on Zoom is 100 and then 500. And they had to go above the 500 because they got so many. For candidates, they can get clients dead easy, but they can never get candidates. They found out what the candidates were interested in. I won't tell you the sector, that would be unfair, but they found out what they were interested in, and they just got people, they just produced people on the show that could talk about that subject. They couldn't, but they could get people. They were coming from droves. Right now, that's not necessarily business development per se, but what that does is support, obviously, the fulfillment. If you can get the candidates, you can make the money. But it also works in a very similar way with clients. As we said earlier, if you get a great subject, then people will come. You can approach people that you don't know through LinkedIn, a LinkedIn message, or you can email them, or you can cold call them.
Webinars in campaigns, your ADA campaign.
You can have a campaign, you can have a LinkedIn drip campaign, because you're changing the narrative from buy from me to value. Are you interested in this subject? It's a different narrative, and therefore it gets a different response. Now, you only need to run 4 webinars a year. That's it. Some people just run 3 every quarter or every 4 months. That's it, really. And then everything gets zeroed in on the next particular webinar, getting people to come to that. Then you process that webinar. I'll talk about that in a second with you. And then you start promoting the next one. That's it, right? That's the deal. That's how it works. Doesn't cost any money, doesn't cost vast amounts of time, and you can live off that. That could be your business development strategy very easily if you get it right. Now, in terms of, as what Pete was saying earlier, in terms of actually speaking to people, you get all of those different ways to approach them, but the message is still the same. We've done the research. This should be interesting. If it is, come along to the show. Whether that's LinkedIn advertising, direct invitations, LinkedIn posts, email, whatever it is. Now, the other area that you can use webinars for in business development, and to be honest with you, this isn't used anywhere near enough, really, I think, is what happens after the webinar. Okay, and to make a point around that, let me just do something right now. Right, so imagine this was a webinar, and I said to you, hey, look, maybe this is a webinar on pitching, and I said to you, look, here's the thing. We know that pitching to high value clients is significantly different to asking them if they've got a vacancy, or could they take this great candidate off you that's available right now. You need a different set of skills. And what we did, we went out to a whole bunch of senior decision makers who were pitched to more times, as one of them said to me, I've been pitched more times than the 18th green at Carnoustie. Apparently it's a golf reference, who knows. But and we asked them what they liked and disliked about being pitched to. And they answered those questions in such a way, I was blown away by the answers. It's cheating, seriously. If you want to know how to pitch and be successful, you read this and it tells you, and it's not me that's telling you, it's these people. If you want a copy of that, all you've got to do is put a 3 in the comments right now, and we will send it to you. Now, back to me now doing the webinar. By the way, you can do that. We have that document, and I will send it to you if you want it, right? You can just put a 3 in there. If you're watching a recording of this, just email pitch to mike@flare.co.uk. There you go, mike@flare.uk. Right. All right. Now, the reason we do that is that in a webinar where you've got sort of 40 or 50 people, if the webinar is on the right subject and you put the right thing out there, people react to that. They'll self-select. They'll say, I want that. That's one of the things. Oh, could you send it to me? Which then, by the way, I'm not going to do this. If you put the 3 in the comments, I'm not going to then try and pitch to you or anything like that. But in a webinar, it gives me an excuse then to make contact afterwards. And if I pick the right asset, I just made one up there. If I pick the right asset, then that begins the conversation, which we all know is the hardest thing to do in business development. To start that first conversation with a decision maker who's high value, well protected, probably doesn't need you in his mind, got loads of agencies, right? Starting the conversation is important. And that's one of the things that you can do to do it. And it works a dream. If you can get people there, you can get them to self-select. Earlier, we said that you can invite people on as guests. That is amazing as well. If you get a really high value client, we've had some really good people on this show over the years. They come on, they talk to you, you get a chance to actually begin the conversation, to start that first conversation. If you can then take it forward and sell to them or build a relationship or whatever it is that you're going to do, then fine. Rob Tyson told me he had somebody on his show 2.5 years ago, who rang him up a few months ago with an opportunity just out of the blue. And it was from that.
You're inviting senior clients, basically, or people you would like to be clients. This isn't finding experts. This is find people in that industry, your exact target client base, and say, I think you've got something special to share. Why don't you come along and do it? And you're right. I've heard lots of people, lots of different avenues. It just opens door after door after door that would otherwise be slammed shut. And I'm thinking now about, do you remember we had the HRD for a FTSE 100 business, the international HRD for a FTSE 100 business, come along to one of our in-person days once. Do you remember he came? And very open discussion with the recruiters about why they couldn't reach him. And he was very explicit. He said, I put things in place to keep you away. And it's very simple. I have a test. If you just ring up and pitch to the people I direct you towards, they will not let you through to me. If you provide some value, if you've got something to give, they'll pass it on to me and I'll start talking to you. And if you give me more value, I'll talk to you more and eventually I'll let you in. And that, that's how you get the really big fish. They don't just dole it out to a cold call, no matter how persuasive or well-trained or drilled that cold call is. It's not going to happen. The ones that you really want have to be, forgive the phrase here, seduced a little bit. And
cultivated. Can we go with cultivated?
Cultivated. Let's go with cultivated. I like seduced. Everyone knows what it is. They have to be cultivated with value, and webinars are incredibly effective because it doesn't require them to take an enormous time out of their day. They can watch them as and when they want. So long as they're of real value, they'll come back. And as you say, Mike, you can line up circumstances which allow you to reach out afterwards. And we forget this. There is still that sense of reciprocity. You know what? You've given me a lot of value. I will take your phone call.
Yeah.
There is that. And I will do you this favor and expand upon what it is I'm interested in and would like to see more about. Oh, you did it for me. And you just move the relationship forward.
And there's the mere exposure effect, if you just want to quickly outline how that works.
Yeah, I mean, that's the psychology. Kirsty told me not to go too deep into the psychology.
We do on this one because I love it. So
the more you're exposed to something, the more likely you are to engage with it, right? So people see you online, giving value, not trying to sell, just being just an honest Joe or Joanne who's trying to help the audience, and they're part of the audience. That just sticks with people. It just connects with them. Okay, can I just go on, because I know we're running out of time. Can I just go on and just talk about one of the big use for webinars?
Before you do, can I make one last point about interaction?
Oh, go ahead. Yeah, please do. Yeah.
Point, right? Everything we just said, you could do without a webinar, really, because you're very good at what you do. You're very long in the tooth. You know the market. You know all these things. You can do without. Your team can't.
Just stole my thunder, Kirsty. He's just doing it
again. Carry on, Pete.
Does it say the Pete Name Show at the top there?
Yes.
Michael.
Your team can rely upon the things you produce for them to speak to anybody. And that 6 months experience becomes irrelevant now because they get the kudos for going, we did a webinar on this. Do you want me to send you a copy? Oh, yeah. Oh, you are someone who's useful to know. Right? So that, everything to do with saying interactions, it equally applies to your team. It starts to make you less of a choke point in your business development cycle. So that's just something else I wanted to throw in before you move on.
Let me show you that. That was my point, and it was better made by Peter than by me, really. But so we can invite people to webinars. That's a great touch point. Would you like to come? And whether they do or whether they don't, we don't care really. It's an excuse to talk to them and just lift the conversation away from, can we do business with you, to, can I add value to you? We do the webinar, people come on it, they interact on it, and sometimes you can, by making them hold up their hands and self-selecting, you can then have a conversation afterwards. That's great. But then once the webinar is completed, particularly if it's a good one, you can not only refer to it yourself, or as Pete says, you can train your people to say, oh, we've got a webinar on that. Would you like me to send you a link? Here's a link to a webinar that we use a lot of. It's time that we redid it, actually. So this is a web page that you can't get to unless you know that URL at the top. It's about creating a scalable recruitment business. As you can see, it's very clever. It tells you which subjects we covered and when we covered them, so people can even just go in and go to the particular part of the webinar that they want. And you can put other stuff on there as well, right? That webinar still works for us, and it's, in fact, we really need to do it because bits of it are outdated now. But that webinar still works for us right now, right? So you can train your people. You don't have to be great conversationalists. You don't have to have the gift of the gab. You just have to be able to say, are you interested in this subject? Well, as it turns out, we have a webinar on it. Would you like me to send it to you? Right? Or you can publish LinkedIn posts that say the same thing and people will self-select. It's an awesome way to de-skill interactions, which is what you need to build relationships with people lower down in your organization, particularly trainees who are not that confident. It gives them confidence because they're going to talk about something that the audience they're talking to is interested in. Statistically, they're interested in. And so therefore, they're more likely to respond positively. Therefore, they're more likely to build their confidence. So if I was going to summarize, I know we've got to kind of do a bit of promotion for the next show and everything, Kirsty, but if I was going to summarize this, what I would say is webinars are very easy to run. They're pretty much free. You don't have to be the talent, you're the facilitator. Getting themes and getting guests, as we've shown, is relatively easy. All you've got to do is talk to people and you'll get exactly what you need. Getting attendees is relatively simple. You've got a whole range of ways of getting them. We've shown you today what they are. And even if only one person comes, nobody else knows. Cannot fail. This isn't like this kind of meeting where there's just the three of us there, which is embarrassing, really. Nobody knows whether there's 1 or 100 or 1,000 people on that webinar except you. You can use it beforehand, you can use it during, and you can use it afterwards forever. It's an incredibly powerful business development tool that anybody can do because it's not about you, it's about what your people, your audience wants to hear about and learn about. And then you fill that gap with whoever you can find. Massively, massively powerful.
Pete, is there anything you'd like to add on?
I will undo all of the fine work Mike and I have just done with this final point I'll make. Once you've done all the things that Mike said, once you've built a reputation, really strong reputation for adding value, once you've cultivated this list of engaged individuals who come to your webinars over and over again, you've earned the right to do a webinar, which is a bit more of a sales webinar.
Yeah.
Come to a webinar where come to a webinar where I'll talk to you about what good recruitment looks like. And at the end, by the way, this is the way we work. Let us know if you're interested. And you'll get a lot more people. And they'll be engaged because they know what it is, but they're giving you the time to do it because they know that's what it's all about, really. And those webinars then convert really well, far better than going out of the gate, running one webinar, which is all about how to do great recruitment. No bugger comes because they all know it's going to be a sales pitch. Those that do leave early when it's clear it's not of value, and then you get depressed. So reiterating your point, ending up reiterating your point, Mike, focus on adding value by understanding what your clients are interested in.
And you can't go wrong sooner or later. On that, right, this sounds like a little pitch, and it kind of is. One of the things that Pete does is run webinars for people. That's what so everything. So basically, he writes all the copy to promote it. He runs it. He'll even appear on the show, or Kirsty will, to be the hostess like she's done today. All you need to do is just turn up and ask the questions that we've all agreed that you'll ask. That's it, really. If you'd like to know more about that, just email tell me more to Pete and he'll let you know. We don't sell to anybody. People buy from us. So you don't need to worry that we're going to be pushy or anything like that. But if you see the value of webinars in your business, but you just think, I can't be asked with all of that, then a conversation with Pete seems to me, would be the best way forward.
Okay.
Or sometimes you've got somebody in your marketing team who kind of wants to do it, but they're a bit nervous or haven't quite understood, and I can help them get up to speed as well.
Exactly.
Sure
Okay,
thing.
so Pete, in a second, I'm going to be coming to you for the top tips. So people have watched this today and they're thinking webinars are different to what I thought they were. I'm interested. I want to know what the first thing I should do in a second. But before then, Mike, let's talk about next show, because we're talking about boosting revenues.
Oh man, yeah. We're all about profit and lifestyle businesses, right? So if you're in recruitment and you want a profit and lifestyle business, a big portion of that is profit, weirdly. And I'll tell you the way you can massively boost your profits. That is increase revenues without increasing costs. Just have a moment to think about that, because if you keep the costs the same but can lift the revenue, 80% of the uplift will go straight to the bottom line. And in the next show, which is 2 weeks from today, I'm going to give you 7 ways that you can do that. And I'm very excited about this, because we've just run a couple of projects for 2 different clients where we've done this, and it's amazeballs, right? So come on the show, learn what those 7 ways are, and think about what can happen to your net profit. If profit's a thing for you, then you should come.
I'm very much looking forward to that. Very, very much so. Ooh, wrong one. Here we go. So, Pete, as I mentioned, people are watching this and they're thinking, right, webinars is where I want to be. It's my jam. It's the thing I like. What's the big thing I need to keep in mind, or the first thing I need to consider when planning one?
Okay, less is more. Less is more.
Is that it? Is that all you got, Pete? Is that all you got? See what
if I was really brave, I'd just stop there, but I'm not. All right, I'm not that brave. So less is more, and by that I mean there's a lot of research on this. I know, because that's my job. I look into this stuff. A lot of research. People are far more likely to come to a narrow focused webinar than they are to a broad-headed one. As an example, you've got this broad webinar, how to recruit better. You'd talk about EVP. You'd talk about using social media to promote your brand. You talk about the importance of a clear job description, and you didn't talk about the importance of having a really smooth interview and hiring process, right? In one webinar, right? You're not going to give anything of real, meaningful, tangible value to people. People won't come. But 4 different webinars, one on how to create an EVP, one on using social media to promote your business, one on how to get really clear on your job description and what you're actually looking for, and one to talk about your sales business. Each of those webinars, narrow, more focused, more practical, will get people coming along.
Yeah, and you can make them shorter. So we often do webinars at 45 minutes. In fact, the one I just showed you was an hour and 45 minutes. And we didn't lose that many people along the way, did we, Kirst? I remember when we did that. You can't be, what is it, Pete? You can't be too long. You can just be too boring.
Correct.
Webinars, right? So you can have what you like. The Americans, what did you recorded one recently, Kirst? How long was that?
3.5 hours.
3.5 hours. Right. Anyway, I did off. But let me just say on this, right, because this is really important, right? When you're doing your webinars, as Pete says, you focus it down, you make it shorter, and you bring somebody on who's done what it is that you're talking about. So a guest who's done it. And then between the 2 of you can really explore the subject. Plenty of talky time, plenty of examples, plenty of stories, and it will really connect. And I think that's a really, really great top tip, Pete.
Also, it means you have more webinars. You don't do it all in one go. So if you're running 4 a year, you've got your 4. You haven't just used them all up in one go. I like.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah.
Okay, fantastic. So it's about that time, ladies and gentlemen, where we're closing the show. So I would like to say thank you very much to Pete today, our king of webinars, for coming on. So thank you very much, Pete.
You're very welcome. You're very welcome, everybody.
Yeah. I'd like to say thank you for Mike, who's here when he's on holiday, and that's why he's been so excited.
That's why my face is red, because I played golf in the sun yesterday without sun cream. So plus I had some gin this morning for breakfast. So
that'll do it. That'll do it. And honestly, thank you to everybody who's watched today. It always is fantastic to have you guys here. So thank you very much. And hopefully we'll see you in 2 weeks when we're going to help you to boost your revenue and profits. Sorry, boost your profits. See you later.